So, we are going to look at precisely how Wordsworth defined poetry. And I quote: Poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful emotions recollected in tranquility. Now, here we might want to pay attention to the choice of words, especially the adjective spontaneous. So, where the classical critics and poets and aesthetes and the neoclassical writers and critics believed poetry to be an artistic skill, they believed it to be a form of art, they attributed some amount of craftsmanship to poetry. Wordsworth and and conversely, you have the likes of Aristotle and Plato who talk about poetry being a result of divine inspiration. Here we have Wordsworth dismissing that to a certain extent and saying it is a spontaneous overflow. So what is it an overflow of? Look at the metaphor that he's using. He's using the metaphor of water. So he says just like water overflows, that's what he's implying. He is looking at a work of creative expression overflowing from inside us, so from inside the poet. So the poet is the source of that creation, uh, and the work is overflowing out of the poet. And what is the source within that poet? It is the poet's emotions. But it doesn't stop over here. So it is a spontaneous overflow. Nonetheless, it is an overflow of emotions that are recollected in tranquility. So, in other words, what Wordsworth is trying to say is that we look at something or we experience something around us. It could be someone singing, it could be a scene, like a scene of a field or a waterfall or a mountain. It could be the sight of a mountain. It could be the sight of a waterfall. Or it could be the sunrise or the sunset, right? And at that time, if we are immersed in what we see around us, we tend to undergo or experience certain emotions. Now, later, when we sit and go down memory lane, we relive those emotions, right? And it is then when we recollect those emotions in tranquility means in solitude and in peace, when we are all by ourselves and we are in a state of complete calm and composure, we recollect those emotions and then we give it a literary and a creative expression. So, this is Wordsworth's idea of poetry. So, he is not talking about an emotional outlet immediately. So, yes, emotions will be triggered when you witness a scene or when you experience something. And all his poems depict this kind of a spontaneous overflow, whether it is the daffodils, where the emotional trigger is the sight of thousands of golden daffodils, flowers by the side of the lake as the poet is taking a walk in the countryside. Or even if we look at his poem, The Solitary Reaper, he listens to a song which is being sung by this lone farmer girl who is working in the field all by herself, and she's singing in a language which the poet does not understand. But her singing is so melancholic and so soulful that the poet is absolutely mesmerized and he's rooted to the spot and he keeps listening to her. And then he goes back home, he sits on his couch, and then he brings back those memories, right? And that is when he writes his poem. So it is not an immediate emotional reaction, but it is a kind of studied emotional reaction when your emotions are modified by your thoughts which are related to past feelings and experiences. So it is not as if I hear this girl singing and immediately I start writing a poem. No, I go back home, I let the feelings distill, I let my thoughts and my feelings get into it intimate interaction